Next, we're going to cover psychoanalytic therapy. The key figure, of course, is Sigmund Freud, the originator of not only psychoanalysis, but really the whole field was a reaction to everything that he did. One of the early ego psychologists is Erik Erikson, and some of the contemporary figures are Margaret Mahler, Otto Kernberg, and Heinz Kohut. And as I said, it's really the first system of psychotherapy that came along. Freud pioneered the whole field. Some of the basic assumptions that we're dealing with, Freud really had a pessimistic view of human nature and a very deterministic way of human nature, that there are all sorts of forces in our lives that are making us be the way we are. We're really at the mercy of irrational forces. So the key concept that you need to remember are the division of personality into id, ego, and superego, that the unconscious is an important part of who we are, and that anxiety is a big function in how we react to the world at large, and that we look to the past for clues of what's going on in our present life. It's basically early Freudian psychoanalysis is thought of as an id psychology, whereas later ones from Erikson on are seen as ego psychologies. The therapeutic goals then is to make the unconscious conscious so that we're able to see it, deal with it, and move on with our lives. The growth of the ego through analysis of resistance and transference, and allows the ego to solve these unconscious conflicts that are holding us back, that are causing the problems in our lives. The therapeutic relationship classically was based on the therapist really being almost anonymous, so that the client could project their feelings onto the therapist. More modern thoughts are that the therapist tries to relate objectively but warmly with the client, and that there's still a measure of detachment. But both transference and countertransference are really central aspects of the relationship, and that's really how the analysis is going to take place. The technique then is to help repressed material surface in the person's life. It'll often take place with free association, dream analysis and interpretation of dreams, analysis of resistance and transference, and it's aimed at awareness and insight, and that will lead to a reorganization of the personality so that we're no longer at the mercy of those irrational forces. The application then is for people who've been helped by intensive therapy and wish to go on with their lives. It really demands a sacrifice of time, money, and personal commitment because it's often a years-long process. The contribution is that it provides a detailed system of personality. It emphasizes the place of the unconscious as one of the things that determine who we are, and it highlights the profound effect of childhood developments to who we are now, to our internal being, and it provides a procedure for tapping into the unconsciousness so that that can be analyzed. The limitation are, of course, that it's such a lengthy training period that very few true classical psychotherapists are around, and because it demands such a great amount of time and energy and money from the client that it's really not useful for a wide range of people, and it's very limited in its use for crisis intervention. Some of the key terms that you need to know for psychoanalysis: abreaction, the emotional release resulting from recalling and reliving painful experiences, sometimes also called catharsis. Borderline personality, the disorder characterized by instability, irritability, self-destructiveness, and extreme mood shifts. And these people are often seen as lacking empathy with others. Countertransference, that is, the therapist's unconscious emotional response to a client that often result in a lack of objectivity. Ego, that part of the personality that's the mediator between external reality and the demands that go on inside. Electra complex, that is the unconscious sexual desire of the female child for her father. Fixation, the condition of being stuck at one level of psychosocial development. Id, the part of the personality that is the blind, demanding, insistent part of our personality that just wants its own way, that the ego really has to moderate between it and the outside world. Libido, the instinctual drive of the id, really where we get our psychic energy. Narcissism, that is extreme self-love. The Freudian stages, then, is first, oral, where we get pleasure from the mouth. Anal, where we get pleasure from expelling and retaining. The phallic stage, pleasure through the genitals. The latency stage, which is really the calm before the storm. And finally, the genital stage, which is really adolescence, where Freud saw the heterosexual maturation happening. The Oedipus complex, as opposed to the Electra, where the unconscious sexual desire of the male child for his mother, and the going along with that, the feelings of hostility toward the father. The general repression, the ego defense mechanism that we put threatening or painful thoughts aside, down from our awareness. And finally, superego. So we've looked at ego, id, and finally superego, that aspect of the personality that represents your moral training, the higher plane of your existence where your moral striving takes place. Transference, the client's unconscious shifting to the therapist of the feelings and fantasies, both positive and negative, that are a part of what's going on in the client's life. And finally, the unconscious, that is the aspect of psychological functioning in our personality that has our experiences, our impulses, our memories, and it's in an out-of-aware place that's protected against that anxiety, and yet that's what really needs to be dug through and grabbed into consciousness for the person to make progress. Those are some of the basic things you need to know about psychoanalytic theory. Good luck on the test.